Hello everyone, welcome to Sinister Prime. Since many of you listen to these stories to relax and drift off into dreams, I thought it would be wonderful to hear where you're tuning in from around the world. Let's begin the story. I've always been a skeptic, dismissing ghost stories and supernatural claims as the product of overactive imaginations. That changed when I moved into the house on Hollow Grove. I had just graduated from college and needed a place close to my new job. The rent was suspiciously low, but the house seemed charming and spacious. The house was old, with creaky floorboards and a musty smell that clung to the air. The landlord was an elderly man, Mr. Carter, who handed me the keys with a warning. "It's an old place," he said, his voice wavering. "Strange things have happened here. If you hear anything unusual, it's best not to investigate." I laughed it off, thinking he was trying to spook me. My first week was uneventful. I spent my days at work and my evenings unpacking and settling in. It wasn't until the second week that I began to notice odd occurrences. One night, as I was brushing my teeth, I noticed the medicine cabinet mirror fogging up. This was odd since I hadn't taken a shower. I wiped it clean, but as soon as I looked away, it fogged up again. This time, words appeared, slowly etching themselves into the condensation. "Get out." I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding. Rationalizing it as a prank or my imagination, I went to bed, trying to shake off the eerie feeling. But sleep didn't come easily. I kept hearing soft whispers, too faint to understand, but persistent enough to keep me awake. The next day, I was exhausted. At work, I could barely concentrate, and my coworkers noticed. "You okay, Mark?" Sarah, my colleague, asked. I shrugged it off, blaming it on the stress of moving. That evening, I came home to find the front door slightly ajar. I was sure I had locked it. My heart raced as I stepped inside, calling out, "Hello, is anyone here?" Silence. I checked every room but found nothing out of place. Still, the unease lingered. I decided to install a security camera in the living room, hoping it would catch any intruders. That night, the whispers returned, louder this time. They seemed to be coming from the basement. I tried to ignore them, pulling the covers over my head, but sleep was impossible. The following morning, I checked the footage from the security camera. At around 3 a.m., the living room door slowly creaked open, and a shadowy figure appeared. It was tall and gaunt, with glowing eyes that stared directly at the camera. It moved closer, and the screen filled with static. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was no prank. I decided to call Mr. Carter. His phone rang for what seemed like an eternity before he answered. I explained what I had seen, but he only sighed. "I warned you," he said. "This house has a history." "What kind of history?" I demanded. "There was a family that lived there in the 1920s, he began. The father was a preacher who became obsessed with the idea that his house was haunted by demons. He performed rituals in the basement to cleanse the house. One night, something went wrong. He killed his wife and children, claiming they were possessed. He was found dead in the basement, having hanged himself. Since then, every tenant has reported strange occurrences. Most don't stay long." I was speechless. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Would you have believed me?" he asked, and I couldn't argue with that. I decided to leave, but finding a new place on such short notice was challenging. In the meantime, I started sleeping with the lights on, hoping it would keep whatever was in the house at bay. It didn't help. One night I awoke to the feeling of being watched. I opened my eyes and saw the figure from the footage standing at the foot of my bed. It was clearer now, a tall, emaciated man with hollow eyes and a sinister grin. His skin was pale and stretched tight over his bones. I couldn't move, paralyzed with fear. He reached out a hand, and as it touched my foot, I felt a burning pain shoot through my body. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The whispers grew louder, surrounding me. "Join us," they said. "Join us." The next morning, I woke up on the floor, drenched in sweat. My foot was red and blistered where the figure had touched me. I knew I had to leave, even if it meant sleeping in my car. I packed a bag and drove to a motel. That night, I finally got some sleep. But my dreams were haunted by the figure's eyes. I woke up feeling drained, as if the events of the past weeks had aged me years. Determined to put an end to this, I contacted a paranormal investigator named Dr. Elise Thompson. She had a reputation for dealing with haunted houses and was my last hope. She agreed to visit the house the next day. When we arrived, the house seemed darker, more oppressive. Dr. Thompson immediately sensed the presence. "This place is tainted," she said. "Whatever is here is ancient and malevolent." She set up her equipment and began a ritual to cleanse the house. As she chanted, the temperature dropped, and the whispers returned, angrier than before. The shadowy figure appeared, but Dr. Thompson stood her ground. "Leave this place," she commanded. "You are not welcome here." The figure let out a terrible screech, and the house shook. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if the walls were closing in. Dr. Thompson continued her chant, her voice steady and strong. The figure began to fade, its outline blurring until it vanished completely. The whispers stopped, and the house fell silent. Dr. Thompson turned to me, her face pale but resolute. "It's done," she said, "but you should still leave. The house will never be safe." I didn't need to be told twice. I found a new apartment and moved out that weekend. I never went back to Hollow Grove. The house was eventually condemned and torn down, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me. To this day, I sometimes hear faint whispers at night, and I wake up feeling watched. I don't know if the demon from Hollow Grove is truly gone, or if it's waiting for the right moment to return. All I know is that some things are better left undisturbed, and some warnings should never be ignored.